Hi, I'm Ryan Reynolds, owner of Mint Mobile. And I know it's hard to believe Mint can be any good for just $15 a month. So let's ask Wasim Iknabi, one of Mint's first customers, if he has any issues with Mint.
No, the service has been great.
And under my ownership, it's going to get even better.
How?
No clue.
Still $15 a month though, right?
Yep. To learn more and see our logo, go to mintmobile.com/Spotify.
New activation and upfront payment for 3-month plan required. Taxes and fees extra. Additional restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com for full terms.
NIL Now with Lauren Sisler and Kevin Jones.
If you want to learn more about name, image, and likeness, you need to go to The Source. The NIL Now podcast from Headline Studio and Reddit highlights the biggest storylines with comments from key guests in the college and high school NIL space.
NIL is not a cherry on top. It needs to be thought about as a part of these young men and women's future to, further their careers. You should be able to leave college with something.
Subscribe to NIL Now on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Strictly Stripes podcast. Doing a little line juggling today. I'm going to be your host, Andrew Gillis. Muhammad Ahmad has the day off. Happy to be joined, as always, by Mike Neislick. Mike, how we doing?
I'm good. How are you, Andrew?
Good. I think this is the second podcast that we've done, just the two of us. So do I have that right?
Yes.
So hopefully we don't screw it up too bad. We do have some fun stuff to talk about for you today. You're going to go through Duke Tobin's upcoming press conference. It's going to be the last time he addresses the media before the NFL draft next week. That press conference is going to be Thursday at 1 p.m. as we record this mid-afternoon Wednesday. We're going to talk about the draft. We're going to talk about some other fun stuff. But before we do, want to remind you guys to sign up for our Strictly Stripes newsletter. You can go to cleveland.com/Bengals, click the blue banner at the top of the screen. That is going to be how you get all of your Bengals analysis, all of your Bengals info. It's going to be sent right to your email inbox on every morning. So, it's a good way to keep up with the Bengals, good way to keep up with what we're doing. And what's going on is a lot of draft stuff. So like I said, I think tomorrow's press conference it's an interesting press conference at this time of year because coaches and GMs are, never really willing to be very forthcoming at that point. It's a week before the draft. You don't want to give away too much, but there are some things to glean. So I'm going to give Mike the easiest layup in the history of layups here. Duke Tobin's going to be talking. What is the number one thing that you are looking for, that you want to know about what's going on with the Bengals right now?
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, you want to know what's happening with Joe Burrow's extension, but you're not going to probably get an answer, or at least a clear one. I guess I'd try to phrase it this way, and he still probably wouldn't answer. But when fall camp rolls around in August, early August, late July, how many contract extensions will you have handed out to like your expected free agents, future free agents? So that could include T. Higgins, Logan Wilson, Joe Burrow, because he said the priority at the NFL Combine was locking up players to, the homegrown talent to deals, and they have not done that as of yet. And I think Jonah Williams is probably out of the equation. Does he expect more than one? Does he expect any? Like what? I don't know how he would phrase the answer to that. I mean, he probably deflect and say, we hope we lock up guys, but not just Joe Burrow. I mean, I think you have to be done kind of looking at that in a vacuum. I think what's the future of this kind of core of this group that was drafted in 20 and 21? How are they? Because Chase is going to come up here quickly. Like how much are you trying to actively get done here before the season starts?
Yeah, so I guess you're saying the question to Duke is, so Duke, over under 1.5 extensions that are signed by guys who are going to be free agents.
I would say 1.5, right? Because you kind of expect one, right? I thought you said just half, so I would say 1.5. Oh no, 1.5. Yeah, I would say over under 1.5. 1.5. Yeah, essentially, yeah. If you want to have fun with it, I don't know how I would take that, but yeah. I mean, and I think it's a fair question. I think it's a good question because I think that this core of this team. Is it Burrow and then there's nothing else and then everybody's playing, because I think it's hard for those players too. I think it frames the season for T. Higgins, for Logan Wilson, if they have to go through, the next season without any sort of future stability.
Yeah, and I think with the Burrow stuff, I think you're right. He's there. It's a hard conversation to have because he's obviously not going to want to be, oh, we're almost done, and it takes another 2 months, and then he just kind of gives everybody false hope, false promise. I do think the question that I would want to know is, do they want to have this wrapped up by a certain date? I was looking the other day, Josh Allen signed his extension like August 6th or something of 2021. I would have to go through it and kind of look at, some of the other big quarterback contracts that have been handed out. But, is there a benefit to getting it done at a particular time? Is there a benefit to getting it done the Wednesday before the draft, the day that everybody reports to training camp, the middle of training camp where everybody's kind of in, stuck in a rut. It's hot. Everybody's tired. Do you do it then? Do you want to do it before week one? I'm curious as to if there's kind of a timing there that if you want to get that done. Am I crazy for saying that? Like, am I crazy for thinking that there's a benefit to having it done at a certain day?
I think his answer will be just as quickly as we can get it together.
I agree, yeah.
That's what he said previously. And I think you've said on this podcast previously that you think they'll do it like right before training camp as like a momentum builder, build it into the kind of the PR of it all, make it a big deal and, try to make a splash right before the season starts, which makes some sense if things aren't imminent in May, but you're going to get it done. I mean, yeah, I guess it would wait, everybody's in town and, that could make some sense. It's just, it's hard to say, They've got kind of all the free agency done. They've got the amount of money they need for the draft. So does it impact anything this year? I mean, if it happens in May, could they sign somebody that gets released after the draft? Do they need some extra money? But those things maybe remain unseen because you don't know what the roster moves are, right? You don't know right now. They might not want anybody, but it's hard to say. I mean, I think it wouldn't hurt to have it done now, so you have maybe some extra money to operate with, but if he feels he has that anyway, it might not make any sort of material difference whether it happens today, tomorrow, or in 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I think to segue, I think that kind of goes for Joe Mixon as well. I think when you talk about his kind of future, I'm going to have a story going up for our website cleveland.com/Bengals. I think it's not. I don't think it's unfair to say that his future is going to be decided here, in the next 10 days. If the Bengals go through the draft, and I know Mike has on his mock drafts have been really really in on Zach Charbonnet, and if you kind of look at Bengals fans on Twitter, everybody kind of always wants that running back. Round 2, round 3, there's Zach Charbonnet, there's Roschon Johnson from Texas. There's Israel Abanikanda from Pitt, like and I really like that kid. But there's guys that are, everybody has a guy, and I think if you get one of those guys, it makes it a lot easier to move on from Joe Mixon. So I'm curious as to what he has to say there, just because again, you're talking about a running back who, he wasn't outrageously productive in the 2022 season, and he's carrying a cap number of 12.7. That's a lot of money. I know some people have talked about the Bengals are expected to give him a pay cut or outright release him, but I think that depends on what happens in the draft, just because again, if you don't end up with a guy who you think can be the number one running back, Mike's made this point a lot on this podcast. Look, this team wants to win a Super Bowl, and you can't go in with a ton of question marks. I guess running back is the one position where you might feel okay about it, but you just don't want to go into a year with that many question marks. So I'm curious kind of what he's going to say about that, because obviously the off the field stuff has got to get settled as well with Joe. There's just a lot going on there.
Yeah, they refuse to comment at every step of his off the field issues and court issues about that, other than to say they're aware of it. I don't think that would change, even though he's he pleaded today, as this moves slowly forward through the courts. I think you'd feel more confident that they'd be ready to release him if they had signed another running back. Like, what if there's nobody available in the first 2 rounds of the draft, and you don't get anybody? How do you release him? Because if you ask him to take a pay cut or get released, you have to release him if he doesn't take the pay cut. But they have no real backup option at this point. And it might not happen in the draft, right? Like if you don't get a running back to the 4th round, that's awfully dicey to sort of say we're going to roll with Travion Williams, Chris Evans, and a 4th round draft pick. Travion Williams has like 40 career carries. I think I wrote in a story the other day.
Something like that, yeah.
It might even be less. It might be like 26. But not a lot. And Chris Evans obviously is that same boat. So, you didn't sign anybody. I don't know what the running back pool will look like in a couple of weeks, if there's going to be anybody available. I think it'd be awfully tough, even though I think Mixon will start kind of, hitting that plateau or even going down here at age 27 in a couple of months. I still don't think you can do that with the roster you have built right now. Release him outright with no sort of backup option. And I mean, there's not, other than Bijan Robinson, you can't really, I guess Gibbs in the 1st round are really the 2 guys that would maybe make sense in the 1st round, but Gibbs would be a sort of a reach at 28. It's tough. They'd have to get a running back in the first 2 rounds, and there's only like a handful of guys I feel like that you could take and maybe do that and cut Mixon outright.
Yeah, and there's, I think, we talk about this with the Bengals, but you can also kind of look at this, from a other 31 teams perspective. I mean, I can't imagine that the Chiefs or the Bills or any team in the division or anybody like that is going to be really chomping at the bit to help the Bengals out, but you kind of look around and say, okay, well, I've seen the Commanders get linked to Bijan Robinson. Like, could they actually take a running back? And if the Commanders take Bijan Robinson, they've got 2 third-round running backs. They got a guy they drafted last year, Brian Robinson, in the 3rd round. They've got a guy that 2020 they drafted, Antonio Gibson, in the 3rd round. Like there are options there. So I think you also kind of have to look at hey, does another team now have a surplus at running back? So maybe the Bengals do add a 4th round running back, and then you get another one. You can do it after the draft.
Right, you got to do it after the draft. I mean, a couple weeks after, once you see where the cuts are. I mean,
right.
Or wait till camp to try to bring somebody in. But I don't think you could. You can't do it if you don't have the capital. And their running room's thin right now to begin with. So it's not like they didn't. Obviously, Samaje left. Like if Samaje had resigned and you resigned Travion and you drafted a 4th rounder, maybe you roll with that and say Mixon's gone, right? But they didn't, and they have only 3 running backs and only 1 with any sort of substantial experience. So it's a thin room to begin with, and a rookie doesn't necessarily make it like, I mean, how much confidence do you have in a rookie, Travion and Chris Evans going into next season? That's awfully tough for a team with those kind of expectations. If you're rebuilding, that's fine, but that's not where this team is at.
But I also don't think you want to roll in with 2 running backs either. The running back position is an interesting one for this team. It feels weird, just because this team does pass the ball so much that you've got probably the best receiver trio, if not definitely the best receiver trio in the league. So it feels sometimes weird to talk about what they're going to do at tight end or what they're going to do at running back. But I guess that's another segue for us. We've talked about Burrow, we've talked about Mixon. Mike, what other things are you looking for? I know, and again, we're not expecting Duke to be the most forthcoming. I would venture to guess all 32 NFL GMs kind of have the same mentality at this time of year. They don't want to be too open about anything. But what are some things that you would like to hear from him, just in terms of what can inform you about the next couple of months?
Well, I mean, I guess with draft specifically, he said he hates trading up. Like, has that philosophy, now that they're closer to a Super Bowl, softened at all? Like, what's the point? I mean, I understand draft capital is important. Teams value it very, very, very much. But like, if you traded a future 1st round pick this year to get a Bijan Robinson or something, or do something like that, not with that name specifically, but if you could, would he be more open to trading a future 1st round pick or future draft capital than he has in past years, because the team is so close to being, in the conversation for getting back to the Super Bowl and has reached the AFC Championship back-to-back years? This is a different kind of team that he's had. Should his draft stance change a little bit, and should he be more open to doing things than maybe he didn't do in the past?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because you look at the last 2 years. I mean, they're picking 28th this year, 2022, they picked 31st. But then the years before that, 21 they picked 5th, 20 they picked 1st, 2019 they picked 11th. They're not picking, or you would assume, if they do, something has gone terribly wrong in Cincinnati, but they're not going to be picking high at, really at any point, you would assume, for the next decade. If they get into the top 10, like I said, something terrible has gone wrong for the Bengals. So I think that's a good point. I am curious. I don't even think it's moving up for a Bijan. I think if you're going to move up there, you're moving up there for a tackle, and then you definitely move on from Jonah. You're moving up for a pass rusher, somebody, position of value.
It wasn't necessarily tied to him.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
Somebody in the sort of 15s he's kind of the perfect example of number wise, where I think that they could, I don't think they could get into the top 10, but they could maybe get to 15, where Robinson's sort of been projected, or Miles Murphy, I think, would be another name that's sort of around there that, I think both of those guys, I think, could be impact players for them. For an impact player, not necessarily insert name here is what my point was. But yeah, no, I think you take a swing, and could he see himself doing that? Whereas he's loath to do it. And I did that, how the Bengals have fared in the first round for this morning. And when you kind of go back to when they were drafting later during that stretch of 5 straight wild card appearances, he didn't exactly hit it out of the park with those sort of 20-ish picks. There was no, real home runs there. And I know he said he likes the flexibility, but, at some point you got to kind of, find those impact players. And, we'll see about Dax Hill still. But, I think now is the time to make a move like that. I don't think it sets you back with if you traded next year's first round pick.
Interesting, because I think you could also kind of make the counter argument. Do you trade back? Or if you're sitting there at 28, if you can pick up an extra, you're probably not picking up a second if you move back from 28 to 32 or something like that, or 31. But if you move back from 28 to 35, maybe you're picking up a third and a fifth. So I would have to look at the trade chart, and because typically those things are pretty accurate, but. I think that, the draft strategy thing is interesting, and kind of with that, I think obviously the Jonah Williams discussions are going to be interesting. Zach Taylor the other day, he kind of gave us, I think, a precursor to kind of what we're going to hear, for Jonah Williams from maybe now until maybe next February, who knows? Zach didn't want to talk about the private conversations that he had with Jonah Williams, which obviously I think we totally get and we totally respect. But, I am curious kind of where they stand with Jonah. You don't have to say what you said, but I am curious, specific what you said specifically, but I am curious what the tone of that conversation was. Is Jonah okay with playing right tackle now? First off, how's his injury recovery coming along? There's a lot going on with Jonah, so I think the Jonah stuff is interesting as well, Mike.
Yeah, well, just first off, have they talked? Sure. Won't play their private conversations. If they haven't had a conversation, that speaks volumes. But ultimately, he doesn't have a lot of leverage, so I see it as it's really in the Bengals' court to decide what they want to do with Jonah Williams, whether he's disgruntled or not. What is he going to do? Sit out? That's a lot of money to sort of waste with no future contract. He doesn't really have any leverage there. So I'm less interested in that than I am some of the other stuff going on. I think obviously those, T. Higgins and Mixon and things like that. I think Jonah's just kind of, he's going to play with them if they want, and if he's not if they don't. And right now they've said they do, and which I understand. I think that's the smart thing to do.
Yeah. Jonah's entering the last year of his rookie deal. His cap number is going to be $12.6 million. So that's certainly going to be fascinating to monitor. Like Mike said, you got the T. Higgins contract extension. You got obviously to a lesser extent than Burrow and Higgins, and no disrespect to Logan Wilson, but you've got the Logan Wilson contract talks. Have they started talking? There's injury recovery stuff with La'el Collins and, cornerback Chidobe Awuzie. I know Mike wrote a story the other day about Cheeto, kind of saying that he's feeling better, he's feeling good. So I think that could kind of play into draft stuff. But we're going to talk about that and more when we come back on the Strictly Stripes podcast. Welcome back to the Strictly Stripes podcast. Doing a little draft talk, talking about Duke Tobin and his upcoming press conference. But before we get into more of that, We're going to let Mike Nislik tell the folks about Subtext. Mike.
Yeah, join our Subtext. You can get free trial, which is the perfect time with the draft here coming up next Thursday. You can get hear directly from us. We'll be in the building, and we'll be texting out updates throughout the whole weekend. So you can get it directly from us when the news breaks, quotes from all the important players, and it's a direct way to communicate us, ask questions that you're curious about or want us to see us maybe ask out there. I mean, it's a good way to sort of have one-on-one access with the whole cleveland.com Bengals team. And so if you sign up, you can get a free trial. Continue on for I think $4.99 a month, so it's not all that expensive. A way to sort of interact with us and have some fun.
Yep, and you can sign up by cleveland.com/Bengals, clicking on the blue banner. It's going to take you right there. It's very easy to sign up. It's also very easy to unsubscribe if you don't like it. So you're not going to be looped into anything. You're not going to be caught, but you're going to stay along. We know you will. It's a good time. And one of those things that we're going to be talking about on Subtext, I'm sure, is the draft, like I said. And we've talked so much over the last couple of weeks, couple of months about, okay, well, here's this defensive back that we really like, or here's kind of the philosophy, and we kind of touched on that a little bit in the first half of the show. But Mike, I'm curious with you, with the draft, almost a week away. What are some things that you would, kind of set as an ideal draft? Is there one particular thing or a couple different things that you would kind of identify as saying, if the Bengals do this, I'm going to be feeling really good about where they're at, and Bengals fans should be feeling really good about where they're at going into the month of May?
Well, I think I've maintained throughout that I think they need a tight end and they need a running back in the first 3 rounds. And they need to use all 3 of those picks to find potential impact players for this fall. So not guys that are developmental prospects where you say, oh, this first-round pick could be good in 2 years with the right coaching. I think you need to avoid that on the day 1 and 2 and sort of focus on getting guys that could, if needed, step into the starting lineup or pretty close to it, get a significant amount of be able to handle a significant amount of reps right off the bat. I mean, names-wise, that's kind of crazy. You never it's impossible. But I think just the concept of using those 3 rounds with a very specific focus in mind.
Yeah, Mike and I have we've kind of disagreed from Jump Street on this about, where you stand with the draft. I think, I've always kind of been team best player available, even if that player, if you're taking an Andrew Voorhees in the 3rd or 4th round, a player who's recovering from ACL surgery, I think, you can do that. And he's an offensive tackle, by the way. I think you can do that. But yeah, best player available has kind of always been, where I've stood on that. I do think you need to add talent to this roster just because, like I said, this team is going to get more expensive very, very quickly. And, I think the best way to elongate the window and, keep kind of going with the talent that they have and the success that they've had the last 2 years is, to get as much talent in here as you possibly can. And you get it, if you draft an offensive tackle in the 2nd round, so be it. I think, you've got to stick to your board, but, specifically, I do think at some point during the draft, you do need to upgrade your pass rush. We've talked about kind of the problems that have gone on there in terms of getting after the quarterback last year. They didn't really do a very good job of it. And I just think, when you kind of look at the future of this team, DJ Reader's going into a contract year. If he's a massive, massive presence, both, physically and what he brings to the defense. So you need a guy who can play that role in the middle, because you kind of saw that they suffered a little bit when he was out. But, Trey Hendrickson's going to be making $17.5 million in 2024. And, Sam Hubbard's going to be making over $10 million. So, you're committing almost $30 million to, your 2 defensive ends. And, you're committing another almost $11 million to BJ Hill. There's questions that you, I think, would have with pass rush. So, to me, I think pass rush is probably the biggest thing, frankly, because, again, you can roll out Jonah Williams if Jonah Williams is going to play. And, assuming he's going to be in the lineup. So, I think you've got to add a pass rush. I think a tight end has become less of a need. I would like to see them add one. I think that could really, add some competition in the tight end room, whether or not it's, Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid in round 1, or, whether or not it's, a guy in the 6th round. I think that, there are options there, but I think you need some kind of youth at the position because, again, Drew Sample, 1-year deal, Irv Smith, 1-year deal. You don't want to really be doing this song and dance for a few years. Running back, I'm less bullish on. I know it sounds crazy because I do think you need an upgrade, but I just think an opportunity is going to present itself. I think you need a running back, but I don't think you need to overdraft one. So I guess that would kind of be my don't. So it's a do get a running back, don't overdraft one. If Bijan's gone, Jahmyr Gibbs at 28. I don't know about Jahmyr Gibbs at 28. So I don't know. I think you need one, but you don't need one till later. So there's a lot of ways that this can go, but one of the question that I really wanted to ask Mike was, like I mentioned, we've debated this for weeks now. And, we hope you've been listening to all of them, but I've kind of taken the approach of draft best player available. If you think the best player available at 28 is a receiver, take him because you never know what could happen. And Mike's approach has kind of been, look, this team is as good as it's ever going to be, or at least as most talented as it's ever going to be. You gotta go for it now. So I guess my question is there a way to do both, do you think? Is there a way to kind of boost the short term, get yourself as prepared as possible for making a run in the 2023 season, while also kind of backfilling some needs to where, next year rolls around when the cornerback room, when you have some questions there, the linebacker room, is there a way to do both of those things and feel good about having the best of both worlds?
Well, if you don't miss at any of your prospects, then you don't have to redraft them next year, right? Or sign a free agent. So, don't miss. But I one question I wanted to ask you. Tight end's kind of the talk, right? And that's been kind of the thought. And fans, I think, would love to see Michael Mayer or Meyer. I don't know. Was it Mayer? I say
Mayer. It's Mayer. Yes.
Mayer. Okay. Because last
time.
Well,
what would just have him do like the Michael Myers bit? And
Michael Myers.
Yeah, exactly.
But if he was available, would you be shocked if the Bengals passed on him?
That's a good question. I think I would need more context there in terms of who's on the board.
That's a weak answer. That's a
I know. I know.
And he's the best available player. How about he's in the top 5 or top 3 of best available players? Maybe not the top.
I know. I'm trying to think of ways that it can get screwy.
Near the top, no matter what. At 28,
like if Dalton Kincaid's on the board along with Mayer and they take Kincaid,
but
I don't think I would be.
I guess I kind of would be shocked if they were to pass him up.
I would be surprised. Shocked might be too strong. Surprised would probably be the word.
Players they like local ties. Yeah. They've shown a history of that. Fits the offense. I think could play right away. Duke Tobin kind of likes drafting tight ends. It's like he's drafted 2 in the first round before. I don't know. I'd be surprised.
Yeah. Shocked is too strong a word because I don't think
surprised bordering on shocked.
Unless they go.
Unless
so what are the levels of like I don't know what stunned then it's surprised then shocked like shocked is like more jarring than surprise.
Yes.
Okay.
Stunned, I think, is sort of like maybe in the middle.
Okay. So maybe, I think that's a good way to phrase it. Because like you said, tight ends are so hard to project in the NFL. It's really, really difficult to do. I mean, you look at Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts hasn't really done a whole heck of a lot. Now, I understand his situation's a little screwy down in Atlanta. They've had some offensive problems, but
we saw Atlanta play. That's really
good Lord, that was bad. That was just not a fun day for Atlanta. But I think Mayer to me is a very pro-ready tight end, which you don't really get to say a lot. You're talking about a player who I think would come in and do really well, just because I think he's ready for the NFL game now. But again, also, you don't really need him to be ready for the NFL game now. If he gets drafted by, I don't know, dart throw Dallas, you hear a lot of rumors with Dallas and Mayer, which is ironic because I think the comp for Mayer, honestly, is Jason Witten. Everybody's kind of freaking out about Michael Mayer running a 4.7, But I watched Jason Witten run a 9.2 40-yard dash for like 10 years, and that man was always open across the middle of the field. So I just think Mayer, it feels like every year we kind of overthink, and I'm saying we as in the collective, NFL media, NFL fans, we always kind of overthink a few guys. And, I think Mayer's one of those guys this year where just everybody's kind of nitpicking something with him where he's really good. And I don't know. I just think that, adding him to the offense would take it to another level. Like if you could, you draft Michael Mayer round 1, and if you draft Zach Charbonnet round 2, like you're talking you want to put the over under of points. You're talking probably 31.5. Like this team is going to put up points. The offensive line will be better. You can make an argument the running back room will be better. You have a tight end room that'll, probably be better, actually definitely be better with Irv Smith and Michael Mayer. It just, the Mayer pick would surprise me. Like the only thing that would really surprise, what did we say? Shock me was shock. Was that shock. The only thing that would really shock me would be receiver. It depends.
In terms of like a position, like if they went in the first round.
Yeah. Like, I guess interior offensive line, but I don't really know, I guess Cody Mock, I don't know, if they're going to draft an interior. But like Darnell Wright's there. They take him over Mayer. I'm not shocked.
I'd be surprised.
Interesting. Okay. But there's a pass rusher there. What's the McDonald? What was it? Will McDonald from Iowa State?
Will McDonald, Iowa State, yeah.
Yeah, you take a pass rusher. Linebacker, I'd be shocked. But Emmanuel Forbes, the DB, you take him. Safety, I'd be shocked. There's not a ton of positions where you'd be like, whoa, I can't believe they did that. But yeah, Mayer, that's a long-winded way of answering.
One player where it makes too much sense if he's available for him not to go to the Bengals. I feel like
Mayer.
I could picture Mayer. I'm saying,
yeah.
It's like he just seems like if he's there, it seems like kind of a potential perfect marriage. You never know. Could result in a divorce. But I don't know if he'll be there. He's trended downwards in mock drafts sort of over the last 2 weeks. But he's obviously been a projected first rounder throughout the whole process. So we'll see, I guess.
Yeah. The Mayer pick that'll be interesting. Again, you can kind of make a case, I think, for him. I've seen as high as the teens. There seems to be a lot of Dalton Kincaid love going around now. In the middle of the first round, maybe that causes Mayer to fall. And I do think if Mayer's there, he's the pick. So we'll have to see. I don't think Duke Tobin's going to tell us that tomorrow. If Michael Mayer's there, Duke, at 28, are you pulling the trigger? I don't think he's going to answer that question, but we're going to get some good stuff from him tomorrow. Muhammad Ahmad and I are going to break that down. Everything he said, everything he didn't say. It's going to be a good afternoon. We got 1 week until the draft. We're looking forward to it. So thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you on the Flippy Flip.